Hi, everybody. Welcome to ZoomInfo's webcast, B2B Marketing Trends, Learn What's Hot and What's Not. We really appreciate you joining us today. We're just going to run through a few housekeeping items before we get started. All right, perfect. So we are going to be recording this webinar, so we should be sending that out within 48 hours after we conclude. If you have a question for the audience today, feel free to use the Q&A chat located in the right-hand corner. And then the last item was just our safe harbor statement. So I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's extremely long, but basically ZoomInfo is a publicly traded company. The presentation may contain forward-looking statements. Any buying decision you make should be made based only upon currently available products and offerings. Of course, we have our complete safe harbor statement here for your review. And so that's it. So I'm going to get started and introduce our speakers today. We are really excited to have Aaron Bird, the co-founder and board chair at Inflection.io, join us, along with Arjun Pillai, our SVP of Strategic Growth at ZoomInfo. And then we have Lauren McHugh, our SVP of Product, Manager of Product Marketing. And they are going to be leading a phenomenal conversation today around the B2B marketing trends and what's hot and what's not. So we're very excited to have the three of them joining us today. I will hand it over to Lauren, who's going to be helping to guide and steer this conversation. And again, if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A chat. We will certainly get to as many questions as we can. All right, Lauren, I will hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Dory. As Dory said, as we get started, we wanted to actually start with a poll before we introduce our speakers. So the first poll question that we have is, does your organization have a product-led growth strategy currently in place? So we will give a few seconds while Arjun and Aaron introduce themselves. So Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And you just took a drink of water.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, I'm the co-founder of Inflection.io. We're building marketing automation for product-led growth companies. So in a simple way, you can think about it kind of like a Marketo or Eloqua or HubSpot, something like that, but really focused on companies that have a product-led motion in their go-to-market. Super excited about that. I've been doing that for about a year and a half, and it's fun to be at the forefront of product-led growth, or PLG, if I'll use an acronym. And definitely feel like that's one of the next big trends after in B2B. So before that, I ran product at Marketo for a little while. And net, I've been in the B2B MarTech space for the better half of a decade, maybe even a dozen years or so. Before at Marketo, I ran a company called Visible, where we did marketing attribution, and so helped marketing teams measure efficacy and ROI. And also was on the board of Arjun's former company and funded their seed round as an angel investor, and was on that board. So have spent a lot of time with Arjun, and I'm excited about his journey into ZoomInfo, which I'm sure he'll get to talk about in a little bit. So anyway, excited to do this and talk about. We got a lot to cover across like ABM, PLG, data, lots of great topics.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. And that was a semi-introduction of Arjun. So Arjun, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Lauren. I'm Arjun. I'm the SVP of Product Management and Growth here at ZoomInfo currently. Before that, I've been in the space since about 2013 or so. My first company was a data company, much like ZoomInfo, to be fair. I ran that company for about 4 years, sold that to another data company, then consulted for a little bit, started my next company, which was into the marketing space, into the conversational marketing space, which is the company that Aaron funded. And we grew up that company, eventually sold that company to ZoomInfo last year in June. And I came into ZoomInfo and took the role that I lead right now. Very, very passionate about MarTech, sales tech, and customer data in general, and how the motions around each of those work, whether it is ABM, whether it is PLG, whether it is ads, all of that. And Lauren and Aaron are two of my favorite people. So to me, this is like hanging out with a couple of people that I really like chatting with. And, hopefully getting into some of the topics that are the best topics that we have to talk around marketing today. So very excited, and let's go.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here with you. And Arjun's company was acquired my second day here at ZoomInfo. So Arjun and I have become good friends since then. But let's see the results of this poll before we get started. So it's a pretty good split. There are a lot of companies that have a PLG strategy currently in place and some that don't. So hopefully everyone can get a little bit out of the conversation that we'll be having today. So we don't have a lot of slides. It's mostly going to be conversational. So you'll be looking at this slide for a while, but you'll hear us talking about a lot of great stuff. So take some good notes, and then we'll get to your questions as they go in. And as Dory said, you can add questions to the Q&A at any time. I'll be monitoring them. If something is relevant to the conversation, we'll probably pop it in there, and we'll also leave time at the end. So to get started, I know we want to discuss the common B2B marketing trends that we're seeing today. And the first trend that we wanted to dig into is to really start around like first party intent and then also account-based data. And I know you have a lot of talking points on this, Aaron, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I think it's having the right data strategy in place is critical in B2B, and honestly, regardless of your strategies or tactics. So like I'll use Visible as an example. So I ran that company for about 8 years. And one really cool thing that obviously we had our own go-to-market that I got to experience, but the product itself was a product that helped marketers measure what was working. So we got to work with kind of the best B2B marketers out there and help them measure what is working and do more of it. So we got to look at our own go-to-market, but also see what was working from others and apply that internally too. So I think, and at Visible, like most companies these days, we were doing content marketing. We were also doing outbound and ABM. The survey you just ran, it looks like about 2/3 of the folks in the audience are also doing a PLG strategy as part of their go-to-market. So we saw this a lot and continue to see it, that most companies are doing kind of all the above, and how much you do in each of these varies. But I think regardless of each of those three strategies, having a solid data strategy is critical. And so, for example, like I think really starting kind of from the high level, I think nailing your ICP or your ideal customer profile and rooting that in data that's publicly available or that you can get access to, right? So as an example, you might say that employee count or revenue or industries, these are things that you're going to use to determine your ideal customer profile. I think there's a lot of great solutions these days to get data, like, are they hiring for certain roles? So like at Visible, we looked a lot for like, hey, we were selling to marketing teams, obviously. And so we said, they need to have a marketing ops organization, right? If they don't have marketing ops, then they're too small. So that was a key signal for us, like at least one person in marketing ops. If they're hiring account executives, even though we're selling to a marketing team, that shows that they're growing, right? And also that they're B2B. So we sold to B2B companies. So if you're hiring AEs, you're growing, you're investing in growth, and you have a sales team. So those were like key signals for us. Those are things you can get from data providers like ZoomInfo, right? And so I think one thing, it's easy to articulate your ICP, but you need to articulate it in a way that you can also go get a list of companies that fit that profile, right? So, if I come up with a definition that isn't a data source I can get, then it doesn't provide as much value. Because I think the next step is, identifying your ICP in terms of the company data. So that's like firmographic data, like employee count and revenue. That's technographic, like, are they using certain technologies, even like hiring and HR signals, like I talked about. Then there's, okay, what are the personas? Like at Visible, we sold to marketing ops, we sold to the VP of marketing and the director of demand gen. Those were our three critical personas. Again, defining those in terms of titles, because you're going to use that in the next step. So like these are the ideal customers. These are in terms of companies, these are the ideal people at those companies. And then now I need to go, even if I'm just doing content marketing, I want to know who are the right companies out there. What's the universe of companies? So using something like, ZoomInfo or another data provider, you can now go and say, given these definitions, how many of these companies are there? There are 1,000, there's 10,000, and ideally get that full list, right? And even if you're doing content marketing and you're doing a heavy inbound strategy, I want to know of my inbound leads and inquiries, how many of them are the people we want to sell to and the companies we want to sell to, right? So enriching that inbound data. And again, a lot of us are doing all these tactics. So to do outbound, it's absolutely critical. Obviously, you're not going to be able to reach out to the right people. So I think whether you're doing outbound via email or calling, I think overlaying ads is another element we did at Visible that was really great. I think a lot of the key companies that are successful here are doing not just emailing outbound and calling, but also mailers, like actually getting boxes on people's desks, as well as like hitting them up with ads. And so all of that, the foundation in my mind is like you start with the data, right? Like we have to know the companies we care about. We have to know who the right people are. Like let's say Microsoft is a good account for you. Well, there's 100,000 people at Microsoft. If you want to go buy ads against those 100,000 people, or you want to call, them, you can't call 100,000 people. You need to call, obviously, like in our case, the director of demand gen, right? And so, anyway, I'll stop there. I think there's a lot to unpack, but I think for me, a go-to-market strategy, and even when I angel invest, like what's your ICP? Like, give it to me, articulate it in specific terms. Who are the people you're going to sell to? Show me a list. If you can't do that, then everything else there, you're just flying blind, right?
Yeah. I actually have a follow-up as you were talking about it. I was thinking, how often do you feel that people should be sort of testing their ICP, making sure that it is the right ICP and maybe evolving or optimizing their campaigns moving forward? Because I feel like people get an ICP or some companies can get an ICP and they stick with it, but it might not be the right ICP all the time. So I was just wondering if you have experience or insights where you offer advice of how often to like check your ICP and make sure that it is really what is going to work for you.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple answers there. So one is segmentation is critical. Realistically, you don't have one ICP. You probably have a few. Like at Visible, for example, we did what we called SMB, mid-market, growth, and enterprise, right? And that was off employee count. It was a good public data signal for us. And I'm a firm believer of as early as you can. It depends on where you are and your the size of your company, but as early as you can, segment the market and have marketing and sales aligned for that segment. So the way we went to market at Visible for SMB was different. It was a 25-day sales cycle. It was a 20K deal size, and the quotas for those reps were lower. So our whole go-to-market model, we had BDRs. We did heavier inbound in the SMB segment, and as you went up market, we did heavier outbound because we could justify the cost. We were sending NFL tickets in a box in our enterprise segment to people just to get their attention because the deal size was justified, right? So anyway, segmentation is critical. So really you have a few ICPs. And I think for product marketing and whoever owns that function, you monthly, quarterly, you want to go and do your close loss deal review, right? And close one. And what are our win rates in each segment? We defined an ICP for these 5 segments or whatever we have. And at Visible, we had one product line. Many people here probably have multiple product lines, maybe even multiple geos and business units. So in each of those, go-to-market or demand units, as SiriusDecision calls it, in each demand unit, you have an ICP. You every month or quarter, depending on the length of your sales cycle, I would go back and look at what are your win rates? Why are you losing? Because to your point, today's ICP, there may be a competitor that comes in and just focuses on just SMB so well that you start losing a bunch of deals and you realize, okay, are we going to invest here or are we not? where maybe, we need to pare back our ICP. It's just the insurance vertical now in SMB, because that's where we're winning, and we're going to give up this other stuff, or at least we're only going to do an inbound motion there, not outbound. So I think it is critical to it's a moving target, right? Because we're entering a recession, that's going to impact your ICP, and your positioning. It's like, maybe it's not about growth, it's about cost savings now and stuff. So all those things, and for me, the biggest metric I look at is win rate, but all just like funnel stage progression. So win rate sometimes is too late, especially in the enterprise segment. You can't wait 12 months to realize you've messed up your selling. But look at that funnel, and your free trial to negotiation, or whatever the different stages are. Watch those conversion rates in the sales funnel by segment, and when you see changes happening, figure out why, right? I love solutions that record sales calls, go in and that. As a CEO, that was one of my favorite things, was to literally just okay, our free trial conversion rate, tanked in the SMB segment last quarter. Go listen to 50 calls, or go read or search through the text, of 50 calls. And I know ZoomInfo's got a great, I think you guys acquired Chorus recently, which was actually, we were using that at Visible. It was it was one of my favorite tools. We were actually we were first 10 customers at Chorus. I remember their CEO pitching me from this little WeWork in San Francisco. But I love that product. I was in there all the time, searching for our competitors' names and stuff. So, that's part of that feedback loop, I think, of getting, adjusting your ICP, changing the investment by segment, by and your mix of PLG versus outbound versus content marketing.
Yeah, definitely. I know Chorus is one of my favorite tools too. I'm on it every day. So Arjun, I know from your side, or from our side, I guess we're together, we have intent, and we always talk about how important intent is in terms of B2B campaigns and both sales and marketing, but we often see mistakes that people are making with intent. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's great that Aaron touched on the basic, which is the ICP building, right? The biggest thing is you put the right ICPs, and you have to be as specific as you can, unless you're a super big company. In that case, your ICP will be wider. If you're a small or medium-sized company, then your ICP should be as tight as possible, and use all the filters that we have in ZoomInfo, for example. There are tens of filters that you could leverage. Once you get to the ICP, the other key part of the selling buying cycle is there is only a small percentage of your whole ICP that is buying at any given point in time. Right? It's single digit percentages, 2%, something under 5% is the buying thing. So how do you get from this 100% of your ICP, let's imagine it's 50,000 companies, to 2,000 companies that you can target this month? How can you get your 5 SDRs to spend their time most efficiently? That is where you layer on this ICP with the intent data, and then you can go to the market. Now, coming to the specific question that you asked about the mistakes that people on intent, and given that we have over 27,000 customers, we talk to a lot of customers. A few things that I've noticed is, and ZoomInfo is not the only company that offers intent, right? There are other intent providers, and some of our customers use us and other intent providers together. It's important to understand what kind of an intent are you dealing with, right? Is it like a top of the funnel intent, or is it like a bottom of the funnel intent? Is it coming from social media? What is the sourcing? I'm not saying you have to know the intricacies of all the technical details of how intent is captured, but it's important for you to know that ZoomInfo intent works best at the top of the funnel. Now, if you take the top of the funnel intent and then pick up the phone call and say that, hey, we saw that you spiked on this particular topic to a customer, that call will not go well, right? Or any intent, you pick up the phone and say that I saw that you spiked on this intent, that's not the best conversation, right? So this is a trigger for you to bring your target account list at this point of time into a finite number of companies that you can go after, and then you go after it in a mindful way, right? So layering intent data on top of ICP is the first thing. We see people putting intent without ICP. That is a mistake. using intent in the wrong way, which is about taking top of the funnel and making phone calls and asking them to buy, is not the best way. Understanding like something like a G2 intent or a trust radius intent, the review sites, that is more bottom of the funnel intent, right? So understanding the differences a little bit is critical. That I think those are probably the big ones, right? If you can avoid going into that, I think that's good. Now, once you figure that out, then find a motion that helps it, right? If it's top of the funnel, then running ads on top is like really good. Sending them outbound cold email in a more relevant way, not to say that I saw intent. It's more like, hey, would you like to are you interested in hearing about the solution, right? So that kind of a more mindful approach to outreaching to that set of accounts is probably the best thing that you can do when you have the intent power on your side.
Now, when it comes to more of you said pushing it to different channels, in terms of like B2B ads, I feel like we always hear that B2B ads are behind B2C. B2C has always been more advanced in how they're getting ads out, the type of ads that are coming out, and B2B is a little bit on the behind schedule. But we've seen a lot of growth in B2B advertising. Is that anything that you feel, what do you feel is driving that growth, I guess? And what do we think we should be doing from a data standpoint to make sure that we're really leading that growth for B2B?
Yeah, I can probably take this, Aaron, and feel free to chime in. So on the B2B ads, certainly the B2B ads is climbing and growing really fast. And in general, B2C marketing is slightly ahead of B2B marketing. For anybody who is in the market, they'll tell you the same thing. One of the reason is every channel is getting crowded, right? Look at emails, look at phone calls. You take any given channel, it's getting crowded, right? It's important for you to reach out to your potential customers on multiple channels. And ads is obviously a really good channel. Now, even within ads, right, people used to use like Google search, they still use Google search, like display. Those are the more conventional B2B ad channels. Now, some of the new ones that are popping up are like the social B2B advertising people on Facebook or LinkedIn, or I heard like TikTok the other day, and people are getting pretty good results on TikTok too. They're getting like 1/5 CPL on TikTok compared to Facebook, right? I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So the interesting fact is on these social media websites, like take Facebook as an example, they'll give you filters like age, gender, those kinds of the conventional filters that they'll give. And those are not useful for a B2B marketer, right? So what do you do if you are a B2B marketer and you want to target your audience on Facebook? At that point is when something like, an ABM platform kicks in, right? Like you need to take the B2B targeting data, push it to Facebook, and layer your ads on top of that, right? So that is part of the reason why B2B ads is growing. And I think it'll continue to grow. In my opinion, we are going to go into TikTok and Snapchat and Reddit and Quora and Spotify and connected TVs. We are probably like 2-3 years into all of these things, but I think that is where the world is going. Aaron?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we did a lot. We saw Facebook ads and LinkedIn ads, like social in general, really effective. And I think one thing that for those of you that have been doing this for a while, I think in the last, 5 or 8 years, the ability to target B2B segments on Facebook and Twitter, for that matter, have come a long way. I know that, circa 5 or 8 years ago, LinkedIn really was the dominant social ad platform just because the targeting is so rich. Like you go back to that ICP definition we talked about, you literally can upload the list of companies, that 50,000 companies, and the titles that match the personas, and you could, target those folks on LinkedIn. So I think and credit to ZoomInfo and some of the other data providers in the space to be able to make it much easier to say, look, I want to hire, I'm going after marketers at, mid-market financial services companies. How do I find them on B2C social platforms like Facebook and Twitter? So it's come a long way. I think that really thinking about like investing in that channel and having somebody spend a lot of time there is a high ROI activity. you can do lots of segmentation. I think back to the intent data, one thing that we did at Visible, and we saw this with our customers working really well, is so we would have campaigns on social platforms that we spent a lot more than our normal CPL or even CPM on. And that would be, if we're seeing high intent data, either top or bottom of the funnel, we would spend more. So we'd take those accounts out and put them in their own campaign to spend more on them. We would also do the BDRs. So we had BDRs doing outbound. The active outbound accounts, the ones that our BDRs are actively emailing and calling, we would spend more on a CPM and CPL basis on those accounts as well, because we're like doing a concerted effort on them. And both of these would actually rotate. So every month we get a new set of intent data because it changes. And we'd also rotate our BDRs either weekly or monthly or quarterly, depending on the sales cycle. Like on the enterprise segment, they would stick with an account for a quarter, but in SMB, it was just a couple weeks. So anyway, our marketing team was constantly moving these, and it was like we were willing to spend more on a impression or click or lead basis, for these higher intent or these accounts that they were actively going after. So being it's not just to set it and forget it, obviously, on like, hey, these are our 50,000 target accounts, let's go buy ads against them. I think the other thing too around ads, we all have content that we've created, and use that content. Even if you built the content for inbound, and what you've probably done is you've said, this is top of the funnel content, this is middle of the funnel content, this is bottom of the funnel. Ideally, you've done it by market segment. This is content for SMBs versus enterprise. Basically, there's your ICP mapping again. Take that content, my mid-market, bottom of the funnel, and offer those white papers, either gated or ungated, depending on your strategy, in social ads, for people that are at the bottom of the funnel intent and that are active opportunities, right? Like, go help your sales team by targeting active opportunities with good content. For those, I would just do ungated, because who cares? You don't need to know if they saw it or not. Like the main goal is just to add velocity. Again, that's an exercise of constantly updating stuff. So I think that all this inbound, outbound, like product-led blends together, and take your good content you've written for inbound, use that as assets for outbound. If you're doing ads at top of the funnel, then obviously, sometimes putting that gated is a better strategy, because then they'll fill out a lead form, and now you can start following up with, email marketing and move them through the funnel. But I totally agree. I think that in my mind, all this stuff is so tightly coupled, right? It's like, nail your ICP, get all the right data, start doing ads based off of where they are in intent and funnel stages. And again, we've seen this work really well for, honestly, for every industry. If you're selling, if you're B2B, it's going to work well for you.
Yeah, awesome. And I know we've touched on it a little bit about sales and how sales is important in the process of this, but we know that sales and marketing alignment is a big trend for B2B. And I know that that's something we definitely want to dig into. From your standpoint, Arjun, what do you feel like the visibility should be across both sales and marketing? Are they working hand in hand? Are they aligned with the same goals and the same KPIs? Or have you seen other trends that you think, from a visibility standpoint, we should discuss? Yeah,
it's interesting that Aaron already started answering the sales and marketing alignment a little bit with his last answer. And he's right. These things are so close, right? These are not individual topics, which is why we are naturally kind of stumbling onto these things in the way we are. So whatever Aaron mentioned is kind of like a motion that I'm seeing with the more advanced organizations where marketing and sales are so deeply coupled. And then marketing will kind of set up the target list, to Aaron's point, right? And then SDRs will kind of go and run a motion against that using cold outbound campaigns. And typical cold outbound campaigns are triple touch campaigns, which includes email, phone calls, and LinkedIn touches or elsewhere touches. So this is like, typically 8 to 13 touches over 27 to 36 days. These are kind of like the best practices that people apply. And then once this motion is happening, so there's like a 36 days window where an SDR is starting to get in touch with a potential prospect or an account. And parallelly, I see marketing teams running air cover campaigns for this set of accounts, which is what Aaron was doing. But Aaron was doing that back in like 2014, 2015, 2016 time because he was in whatever he was doing. But I see a lot more companies doing that these days. And again, since I know Aaron so well, and I should probably let him tell the story, but there is one motion that I really loved that Aaron did at his company is he used to have marketing people write the outbound emails for salespeople, right? so that touches to the pain points. Obviously marketing people are in most cases better at putting the sentences and words together. And I'm going to stop it there, Aaron, and I'll let you tell that story. But that is another motion that I see a lot, right? So there is the same target account list using ICP and intent, and then having same time campaigns on both sales and marketing channel at the same time, having the same content, marketing helping SDR content. So that is the third piece. And the fourth piece that I see, which is probably your question about the visibility across marketing and sales, right?
Yeah.
There is always this thing that marketing is not giving us leads. I don't know what they are doing. And sales, marketing folks are like, there's so many leads that we are pushing. I don't know what sales is doing. They don't get in touch with these people. I don't see them reaching out. They should get in touch in 5 minutes. What are they doing? So we hear this all the time, right? So this is why that giving the visibility across the organizations is very important. And depending on how big of an organization you are, you need to find the right motion to give that visibility. If you're a super small company, get in the room, or catch up in the coffee pantry and just talk about it, right? If you're like a 10 people, 20 people company. But if you're slightly above, then you go and do the weekly review thing. I see like Thursday, 10 a.m., sales and marketing will get in the room and kind of explain what is happening, which accounts they are targeting, align on the accounts. If you're bigger, then you probably have to get some tooling around it, right? Whether it is based on your marketing automation, whether it is based on your, something like ZoomInfo, for example. We have a lot of sales and marketing alignment features and pieces that we are building into the systems. So, so again, that is the visibility part. I would specifically say. I want to touch on the automation, but I want to take a pause and give it to Aaron to kind of talk about the story that I mentioned probably in a brief way. Yeah, it's a nice one. That's why.
Thanks, Arjun. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think when it's really humming great, sales and marketing are not like they're working hand in hand in like every step of the way. And so a couple of things that we did at Visible that worked really well around that. So as you mentioned, we had the marketing team owning messaging. And, again, this was all by segment. So, we had SMB, mid-market, growth, enterprise. Each of those 4 segments, we had different messaging. We had messaging for each persona. So it's like if you think about the rows are the market segments, and then the columns are the personas, like VP of Marketing, Director of Demand Gen, Director of Marketing Ops. For each of those cells in that, kind of spreadsheet there, we had messaging. So enterprise CMO gets this messaging. SMB Director of Marketing Ops gets this messaging. And we had the marketing team. So we used an outbound automation tool, and the marketing team owned all the messaging that went into that and in the emails. Again, tied into content. We've all seen those cold emails like, hey, are you in the market for this or whatever? It's like, don't do that. Give them content. You have all this great content. You wrote this white paper. Just, SDRs, just send them a free white paper, and even if it's ungated, right? And so anyway, like the marketing team, I felt like had the best understanding of like what content was going to resonate with what persona, and they were constantly testing it. So they're testing this in and out, and then that left the BDRs to be able to go and like pick, okay, what am I customizing in this outbound sequence? I've done maybe in the first email, you have a first sentence where they picked up their LinkedIn or whatever. So they would be able to, the BDR could do some personalization. The marketing team owned the messaging. We did some pretty cool stuff too around like bringing ABM and content, and even like PLG all together. And so, and this is all credit to my marketing team at Visible, and like Dave Rigotti, who ran it. So we did this thing called Fast CMO, and we created a big magazine, color, high gloss, like really the most expensive kind of like print you can do. It was like 40 to 60 pages. It was kind of thick bound, right? We created the first edition of Fast CMO. We put one of our favorite CMOs on the cover, and we for the mid-market and enterprise segment, who we really wanted to get access to their CMOs, but we're having a hard time in the sales process. We used Sendosa for in Salesforce, the BDR could press a button and it would ship Fast CMO to the CMO's desk, right? So the first thing, I'm a big fan of mailers. Arjun mentioned that every channel is getting, more, there's more competition and it's harder in every channel. If you send someone a high gloss magazine to their office, it's going to end up on their desk, right? If you send them a letter, it might end up on their desk. It might end up in some pile. It might end up in the recycling. But a high gloss thing that has their name on it, like whoever's managing mail there is going to be like, I'm going to put this on the desk. So, and guess what? There's nothing else on their desk. Like there's no emails, there's very little competition there, right? So anyway, we would send this thing Fast CMO. And Sendosa had this great feature where when it lands on their desk, it notifies the BDR. So that would kick off a sequence that would say, hey, I realize you just got our Fast CMO magazine. We would love to interview you for the next edition and put your face on the cover. So what CMO doesn't want their face on the cover of a magazine?
I was going to say, everyone loves to competition, so.
Yeah, exactly. Appeal to people's kind of identity and everything, right? So, so the conversion rate on this was epic. The BDR would then schedule literally an hour call for me to talk to the CMO at one of our target accounts that like our salespeople have been trying to get a hold of for 6 months and couldn't, right? And it was great. We'd have a great conversation, which is super fun. We would record it. The content team would go create like a 5-page article out of it. We would create a CMO version with their face on the cover. Nice. We'd send them 50 copies so they could send it to all their friends or whatever, and it's like floating around the office, and that's fun. And of course, we'd have a great conversation, and in part of that conversation, I would ask some discovery calls, like, well, what are you guys using for marketing measurement? Because that's what we sold at Visible. Like, how do you justify the ROI? Like, when the board asks you what you did with all that money last quarter, what do you tell them, right? So. And it wasn't a sales conversation, but I got a little bit of discovery in there, made a great connection. And then, of course, after that, like, hey, I follow up. I'd love to tell you more about our product, to give you a demo if you have time. And that was like a 30% conversion rate for me to go give this person a demo. The rep has all the discovery questions they wanted. And then meanwhile, like, we're talking to their director of marketing ops, and now we've got the CMO involved in the deal. And so anyway, and that was awesome because then what came out of that was all this great content, right? We went and had 50 conversations with all these super smart CMOs. And then not only did we create these hardbound magazines, but, we created a bunch of blog posts. Like, what is the CMO box doing, right? I mean, it's just like recycling all this content through like white papers. And we actually were going to write a book about Fast CMOs and like put all this together in a book. And we ended up selling the company to Marketo, and so ended up not finishing the book part. But we're working on like a podcast series with these CMOs. So I think so this was like, was that outbound? Was that content marketing? Like what, well, it was all the above, right? In the end, we built a product that was this actual hardbound magazine. So it was like part product-led growth as well. So I think, that worked for us. There's like a million ideas like this that marketers are so good at getting creative. And I think, but again, what did you need for that? Well, you needed the data. Like, we had to get to the right person. We had to do outbound to them. We had to write great content, right? These are all just like core marketing capabilities that when you bring them all together with some creativity, you can really like move the needle.
Yeah. There's going to be competition now. You just gave everyone the right idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Arjun, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about automation. Do you want to finish that up? that thought up?
Yeah, no, it was a quick kind of add-on thought to whatever I mentioned last, right? As the companies are growing to become bigger companies, how do you manage the sales and marketing alignment a little bit more in an automated fashion, right? Aaron mentioned about how they use Sendoza back in the company, and there was, for SDR, it was just one click of a button, because if you make it insanely hard for salespeople or marketing people, they're not going to do it. Right? You have to kind of present it in a way that it's easy for them to execute on it. You have to present it in alerts to them on Slack, saying that, hey, your account is currently visiting your website. Your opportunity deal size is $34,000 on this particular account. Do you want to chat with this person? From there, from Slack, without leaving Slack, they should be able to click one button, start chatting right in Slack. Right? So there's a lot of automation that you could do using your tools, existing tools. In, like, if they are using ZoomInfo, then they don't have to go externally. They have something like Workflows, which is kind of built into as an automation tool. But if you're using some other systems and you want to connect it between systems, there are systems like a Zapier, IFTTT. There are different automation tools that you might want to use to kind of automate some of these things. Because if you think that you're doing the same thing again and again and again, it's probably smarter to find a way to automate that. So that's another key part of the sales and marketing motion.
Yeah, that's great. I think we're going to shift gears. I know we've talked a little bit about PLG throughout the conversation, but I know we want to focus on this trend because it's a big trend that we're seeing, and Aaron has a lot of good experience in it. And just wanted to say congratulations to you on your recent fundraise for Inflection.io. So congratulations, Aaron. But I know from a PLG standpoint, it's one of the big trends that we're seeing. So can you go into exactly like what PLG is for anyone that might not have that much experience with it yet?
Yeah. Well, it's a TLA, which is a 3-letter acronym, which we love in marketing, right?
We love.
There's ABM and PLG. We just can't get enough of them.
MAP.
But, yeah, exactly. ICP. They're endless. Yeah. So I think for me, it's kind of it's the third leg of this stool that us as B2B marketers have like evolved over the last 20 years. And I think the big innovation that we saw around kind of the Marketo and, the legacy marketing automation, if you will, was bringing sales and marketing data together. So like all of a sudden I've got Salesforce CRM data inside, my marketing automation, and I can personalize and create audiences based off of this. And that was, riding obviously the big wave of content marketing and inbound marketing at the time. Get an email address from somebody and start moving them through the funnel with all this great content, right? That's what we all were like, that was innovation 15, 20 years ago. And that's what we were all focused on. Since then, ABM has been like kind of that next big thing, which has this inbound, outbound kind of all mixed together. And for me, like the PLG or product-led growth is really this like final third leg of this sales, marketing, and product stool, right? And so, and what does that actually mean? So if you think about like today's world of getting people's attention is becoming harder and harder, right? And it's not just about top of the funnel and having marketing drive demand and then sales close demand, and then we just go back and rinse and repeat. We have to keep our customers, right? And so PLG is very much about what are people doing in our product? And that can be top of the funnel if you have a product that's engaged in the top of the funnel, like if you have a free trial, or even if you have free products that you offer alongside your paid product to kind of generate demand. So that PLG can play, and it's most well known for driving demand, and that's what people think of as PLG. But really, it's about not just the top of the funnel, but the full life cycle. So I think the thing that's amazing about PLG is it's the first time that the marketing team has the opportunity to truly be a full life cycle team. We're not just about demand. We're not just about product marketing or segmentation, but in a one-to-many way, if you know how people are using your product and you have great data about them, about their account and the persona, et cetera, you can do one-to-many communications to reduce churn, to do upsells, right? Or to signal the enterprise team when they should reach out. And so if you think about this world of, customers come in and maybe they sign up, and ZoomInfo is like a great example. Maybe one rep signs up for ZoomInfo at a company of 10,000, and they're using some data. Well, yeah, sure, that's a closed won deal, but it's $100 a month, and the opportunity here is probably $100,000 or $500,000 a year, right? And so, how do you now take the fact that that person's using the product to get more people in the organization to use the product? Even once you've fully deployed everyone and it's maxed out your deal size, well, how do we make sure that they don't churn, right? Well, all of that, the key insights there is all around how are they using the product, right? And so I think the key innovation here for marketing teams is being able to get usage information into your marketing automation to make better decisions about how you're marketing to them, whether it's top of the funnel because you've got one person using ZoomInfo at a big company, or even if you've got like a free product. Like one kind of classic one I like is for those of you guys that have got a little bit of gray hair like I do, the HubSpot's marketing website grader, right? Back in the day, you put in your domain and it gives you all this SEO grading, and it tells you like your SPF record's not set up, so your deliverability is not what it could be. Like, it did all this stuff, and like HubSpot didn't have a free product, but they innovated by creating this. You couldn't use HubSpot for free because of spam issues, but there was this free product that people would start using. Well, you know what? As soon as you release that, you go, well, I want to know who's using that, who's coming back and filling this out all the time. Like our outbound team should call them, right? So PLG can also be if you have like a something that blurs the line between content and even like a free product, getting that data into the system. Anyway, so that was probably the most long-winded answer to like what is the three-letter PLG acronym. But as you can tell, I'm excited about it, and I think that it is the next big trend. And just like inbound and outbound, like we all do all of these things now. I think in 5 years, we're all going to be doing some sort of PLG, and making sure we have the right data and the right tools to do it, I think is critical.
Yeah, definitely. And I know, Arjun, you and I work very closely together in terms of product building, and PLG is always something that's top of mind for us here as well. But from your perspective, whether it's from ZoomInfo or your previous companies, we know that PLG is something that you are very passionate about from a product side. What do you think are good tactics to know about PLG from a product side, or also what people should make sure they have within their PLG motion? One thing that I can think of, like you were saying, Aaron, is the ability to track who was actually there. So you can do some targeted follow-up. I feel like analytics is an important piece that always sometimes gets overlooked at least from a product side or a PLG motion. So I'm curious to see what you have to say, Arjun.
Yeah, no, PLGs, I'm very excited about PLG. If I put some rough numbers, I believe that like about 30% of the funnel will start coming from PLG, and every company, even the biggest of the companies, doing more than like $1.5 billion in revenue, and the ones that we were like, oh, that's an enterprise company. In fact, I know of this company that sells their ICP is about $10 billion in revenue is the ICP of the company, believe it or not. And they are spending thousands of dollars every week now to go PLG. So imagine, right? Like a company that enterprise is going really PLG. So it is not a fad, or it's not something that's so trivial. And there are misconceptions also, right? There are like, hey, PLG means no salespeople. That's not true, right? There are a lot of myths around PLG too. But to Aaron kind of explained it beautifully. We had inbound, we have outbound, we have ABM, we have all the other things, but this will also be there, because this is a top of the funnel, and one size does not fit everything, right? You need to have more and more stuffs. About the PLG motion, the other thing that I really like about PLG is there is a very now mindset in PLG, right? Which is very, like if you take a step back, what is prompting PLG, right? Think about the B2C experiences that we have. Go to Amazon, see the thing, read the reviews, click, buy, right? That's it. I get the product, right? And whether it is a B2C app, mobile app, like an Android app or an iOS app, you just go in and start playing around. I'm seeing the app. And then it comes to B2B. The same human being took a car, drove to the office, in some cases did not drive to the office these days, put on pajamas, got to his workstation or her workstation, now trying to buy a B2B software. Okay, you just have to wait for 65 days, go through like 10 times of sales calls, do all the customer interviews and discovery calls. And, we just make the buying process tough, right? And that to a millennial and to a Gen Z is like not good, right? We are people with like 8-second attention spans. So we do not want to be kept out, right? So that behavior of the human beings is the behavior that is pushing PLG it's a now mentality. Now, I want to see the product now. I want to play around with it now. I want to go in. You don't need to tell me. I know what I'm looking for, right? So that is what is prompting PLG. And when you build products, right, it is also very complicated for you to put onboarding and implementation and ongoing customer service for every single feature, right? You need to get to a point where you start thinking about adoption in a ground-up fashion. Getting a feature adopted is nothing but PLG. You have a new feature. Instead of putting like an in-app message and saying we have this feature, how do you get the person to organically move to that feature? And there's the now mindset there also, right? Like when this happens in the product, just send this particular thing so that they take that step, right? The now mindset is also there in that PLG. So things that Aaron is working on, like his new product, Inflection.io, the reason why there needs to be a new product is because the existing products cannot really do the now mentality. Right? Existing products are more of batch mentality. Put everybody into a set of emails, let's send out emails, they'll get it 48 hours after they do the action. Right? That's not good enough for PLG, which is why Aaron is kind of a new platform for it. I know I gave a bunch of different things, but in terms of tactics, the biggest change that we need to do is people need to start thinking about PLG and start thinking about how do I get 30% of my top of the funnel through PLG? And then come up with, am I going to make my full product PLG? In some cases, it is tough. Can I do a full free version, or am I going to do a freemium version? So is it, I can have like one version for free forever, or I can have like a freemium version for like a free trial for like 30 days. That's another good motion. There are also these new tools that are coming up that will enable you to create demos of your product, interactive demos of your product very easily. So maybe there's a way in which you can create an interactive demo of the product, put it on the website, maybe even in an ungated fashion where people can just go around and play around with the product, see the UI, feel the UX. If you're confident about the product, why not? Right. So like those are some of the tactics. And then taking a step back, everything Aaron mentioned, right? Like, can you create a piece of content that's like a really good thing? Can you create a side product, like a website grader, or like an SEO analyzing, whatever is it, like a small piece of the product that appeals to the same customer segment as your core product? Like, can you put that out there, drive some traffic to it using ads or word of mouth or referrals, and then, start getting interest from people. So, tactics changes a lot, Lauren. It depends on what kind of a company you are. Even like Tesla is a PLG company. If you remember, they had take the car, drive it out. If you don't like, bring it back in 7 days. That is PLG, right? They were so confident about the product that they just left, here you go, product-led growth. They changed it now.
There's a mattress too, I think, now that you can have for like 30 days. Which makes me concerned with, like, do they give that mattress to then someone else? So that's a little strange, but that's a whole other thing.
The one that I use has got a 365 days trial. It is expensive, but I can use it for 365 days. On the 364th day, I can say I didn't like this. And then they will, somebody will come and take the thing away to give it away to, charity and organizations and so forth. But, so what I'm saying is, Tesla's tactics cannot be applied for a B2B SaaS thing. So tactics will vary a lot. The mindset is the most important thing here.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, that's great. And I know one of the last trends that we wanted to dig into, and there's a few minutes left, and there's a good question in the Q&A box. But the last trend is around like the modern data stack. I know that's something that, Arjun, you have a lot of insight and passion about. So let's get started there.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it like 45 seconds so that we get a chance to answer Aaron and then get to the question. The modern tech stack, again, it is an extension of everything, right? Like to support PLG, you need a modern tech stack that is able to handle the product usage data, which is not typically a data that you have been handling. Product team used to handle product data. The sales team used to handle customer data, right? But that is changing. Now the product data is flowing into the customer data so that you can hit the right people at the right time. So the modern tech stack, and we have given an umbrella term for all of this called CDP, Customer Data Platform. And it's a very, very loosely defined term. You go to any given website, they will claim to be a CDP company. But fundamental argument about CDP is that there is this one place where you can drop all the data in and then activate against that database. All of us have heard customer 360. It's probably older than me, that terminology of customer 360. And it's like how we define solar, right? Solar is the future and will be the future. Customer 360 is the future and will be the future. We don't know when we are going to get there. But jokes apart, I think the modern tech stack should be a version of the CDP, right? And different companies get to CDP in different ways. Some people buy a CDP solution off the market. Fair enough. Some people build it in-house using your internal databases. Some people take a Snowflake and put a bunch of rules around it. Our solution, Ringlead, that ZoomInfo sells, is like an amazing add-on to a customer. A lot of our customers buy Ringlead so that they want to manage CDPs by themselves, right? And we sell a ton of that. So modern tech stack, in my opinion, is the place where you can bring in all the data, do the identity resolution so that you can get one clean record and then take that record and activate it against ads or email campaigns or chat or whatnot.
Yeah, that's great. Aaron, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I think Arjun summed it up well. I think the CDP, whether it's an off-the-shelf CDP software solution, or most of our customers and most kind of the advanced marketers I've seen are taking the route of like a Snowflake or Redshift or Google BigQuery, where they've got folks that are putting their own first and third party data into their own data warehouse. But either way, you've got to get all of your data in one spot, and then activating it is the next step, obviously. And that's the thing that we're really focused on at Inflection. So if you're looking to do more activating of your CDP or data warehouse data, that definitely check out inflection.io. But I think that those are the keys to the modern data stack, and Snowflake's IPO and skyrocket that we've seen is a testament to that. I mean, it's all companies standing up their data warehouse to get their data in there and activate it.
Awesome. So let's shift over to questions really quickly before we wrap up. One of the great questions we have is around intent. Do you feel that coincidental or non-incidental approach works better from an intent side? And I'll let either of you choose who likes to take it first.
Why don't you take it, Arjun?
Sure. Yeah. I assuming I'm understanding this right, I think that the non-incidental approach works better. I would take, again, depending on the intent, it really depends a little bit on the intent. Okay, let me take a step back. There's no world where I pick up the phone and say that I saw you search on this intent topic, so do you, right? There's no world where that happens, right? So that's out of the picture. But are there places where I can
don't do that?
Yeah. Like, are there places where you can hint it, right? Like, you can probably write in subtle ways about I saw. Typically, companies of your maturity curve adopts a marketing automation platform. So I was wondering if this is a problem that you're looking into. That's like a very subtle way to place your thing. So that's how I would look at intent. And depending on the source of the intent, it could be slightly different. But if it is a product-led intent, right, that is very, I saw you try out the product. That is an intent that you can say. Or if your first-party intent, like we have a product called Websites, which will kind of help you de-anonymize your website traffic, right? That's your first-party intent. The company came to your website like multiple times. 3 people came to the company in the last 7 days. At that time, if you reach out and say that, I believe I saw you on the ZoomInfo website, what were you looking for, is not a bad thing to do, because today's sophisticated buyer kind of know that, okay, this, they know when I reach, right? So those are not bad. I saw that you tried to go into the pricing page inside the product and tried clicking to pay. Did you find any problems? Can I help you to pay? That's a product-led growth. So it really depends on the kind of the intent. But let me take a pause and give it to Aaron.
I think you summed it up well. I think that's a great, I don't think there's much I can add there.
Great. Well, we are over time now. Dory, I think you are going to come in and wrap us up.
Yes, absolutely. No, it was a great conversation. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Arjun and Lauren, for moderating today. That's it for today, audience. We are going to be sending out a recording of the webinar, so probably in the next 48 hours, we will certainly send you the link. And feel free to share with your colleagues all of the information. And we hope to see you soon on another ZoomInfo webinar. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.